Good to be with you again. I want to believe you can hear me, and I want to believe you can also see my screen. All right. If that is the case, then we'll just go on quickly. We've lost some few minutes already. All right. If you can see the screen, that's really fine. Please, in case there are any anomalies, admin, please signify or let me know about it. Okay. In our previous class, we got talking about the pipeline operation through pipeline, pipeline operation through SCADA, and we explained what SCADA means. We looked at different scenarios in SCADA, and then we went on to also give some assignments that I believe by now you must have all submitted that assignment. If that's not the case, well, uh, you won't blame anybody for that. All right. So, quickly to just round off some this part because we have quite a lot to talk about. We'll be hinting or touching. We'll be getting materials to later on. All right. Now we looking at the application. We'll be looking at the applications of software that or some software applications rather that can be used in all and their uses in this area that we'll be talking about on pipeline operations or as regards oil and gas management, international oil and gas management. All right, so like you can see on the screen, we have an application for leak detection and location module. Now, what is it? So sensing pipeline leakage. The function is for sensing pipeline leakages and location. You know, as I said earlier in our previous class, there could be leakages in any of these pipelines and it needs to be detected. So there are leak detection systems. I thought to read up about that are usually employed in detecting these leakages, no matter the location where it is. So we also have applications that are also use softwares that are used in helping to detect where this kind of leakage could be or sense where the leakage is rather and first sense that there is a leakage and then also be able to determine the location where that leakage is. It also does that by using coordinates, the coordinates. That's what it basically also works with. All right, and the flow, then pressure drop. So it relates the pressure drop, the flow dynamics, and the coordinates. That's how it works. So then we have the batch tracking or interface analysis. The batch tracking or interface analysis. And that one it does calculation of motion and position of batches. So for each batch of crude or petroleum products that are being transported around the across the line, each batch it calculates the motion and position. That also uses coordinates too. All right. Then we have the peak tracking. Yes, we'll be talking about peaks shortly in this program. During pipe maintenance, we make use of peaks, especially in cleaning of pipe. What are peaks? Peaks are pipe investigation gauges. Okay, and we have different types of them. And while we launch them, from the point of launching, where we have the pig launcher, to the point of receiving the pig, where we have the pig receiver, these are different it's quite a distance, so they need to be what the tracking of these pigs inside their equipment, their devices. So it's not the pig that pig to be as an animal, but this means type investigation gauge. That's where it coins its name from, or it gets its name from rather. They have different types, as I said. So it tracks it inside the pipe. Every location there's a track, from whether Nigeria to Niger Republic or from Nigeria to Morocco or wherever or Angola, or offshore onshore, wherever, as long as there is a point for there must be a point for the pig launching, and there must also be a point for what the pig receiving. You will see how that works shortly. I'll be showing you that in a video in a few minutes from now. Okay, and then we have our pipe. Like I said, it's just for tracking. Then we have the look ahead model. We also have that one just helps to predict the future trend of pressure. Then we have the pipeline efficiency. That one what it basically does is to recommend for cleaning of pipe. So it checks when a pipe is due for cleaning and all that stuff. So when it recommends, when the pipeline efficiency tool is used and it detects that okay, the pipeline is due for such activity, then the pig is launched from the pig launcher, and then the pig tracking um, application software is used to track the pigs. You understand how that works now? All right. So we have a predictive model too. We have the predictive model. That one is used basically for hydraulic dynamics in the pipeline. The hydraulic dynamics, uh, the dynamics of flow of the fluid in the pipeline, of the system in pipeline. So it simulates it. It does that offline. First, it's an offline simulation. So it's not a dynamic simulation. It simulates first offline based on the information we have about the fluid, the pipeline, the location, the types, the sizing, and all the rest of it. So it does we now do a predictive model. I'll use the predictive model rather to simulate the hydrodynamics of that um, process, okay, or in that particular pipe. All right. So some of the system capabilities and benefits that we need to also know when it comes to operational information and control. Number one, data is required for field sensors and instruments. Certainly before any of these instruments or sensors can work, we will need data for that. That's information. We're not talking about your browsing data. No, we're talking about different information. And we also need such data to process. The data is going to be processed for monitoring and control of the engine motors and the valves. You need a lot of data about the fluid dynamics, about the pressure, about the temperature, some varying factors that will be needed, the temperature differences and the rest of that. Now, all that, then the operability, the design of operation conditions of these devices or equipment, and their main operating condition specifications. All right. So we need all that in the course of we need all that in the course of our um, utilization of SCADA. Okay. Then the operator settable alarms for station from centralized master station for pressure and flow. This is still an explanation what I've earlier or an elaboration of what I've earlier explained. The pressure, the flow, and all that. You have to set different conditions that are realistic to what is obtainable um in the pipeline. Okay, and a lot of other control information or operational information that are also needed, even up to the block valve under you have something here. Said the block valve under the respective station can be locally controlled by the station control center in case of what? Master station communication fails. So, excuse me. Now, paraventure, we have maybe a failure in communication. You know that this SCADA is more like an automatic means of operation or managing the operations in the pipeline. Now, the communication. there could still be failure sometimes. So there need to be, it is necessary and very important that there is an alternative measure or alternative plan in place. The alternative plan in place is what this is talking about. And usually the block valve under the what now respective station can be locally controlled. So it's not just that it is pneumatic, it's not only pneumatically or automatically controlled. It can also be what now locally controlled. So it's like a two-way control system that it has. So when the system everything is working normally, then the control can be from the master control center. You understand? But in case there is a failure in communication from the master control center, then it can be what now locally controlled by the station control center. STC. Remember we talked about this in the last class. STC, MCC, and the rest of them. All right. So, added to that, we'll look at the maintenance benefits. The maintenance benefits. What are the benefits of maintenance? We just put this highlight. You know, it's more than that, but it's highlighted to just hit the key points there. All right. Now, data is stored as history. That's one good thing about it. So it's so that you can always refer back to a lot to the data that has been taken from the past, from past operations and all that, because it will be stored as history. Now, archive data and alarms for future analysis too can also be obtained in the system. You know, then another benefit is that another maintenance benefit is that it generates hourly and daily shift reports. You know, every hour, there's a report generated, and at the end of the day, we have a collective report for the day's operation. You know, then you could have remote and auto start of the. You could have a remote and auto start of the RCP and of the DG. Then you could also have event database. The event database, the excuse me. Okay, I'm going to correct something here. Okay. Okay. Yes. Now the event database will maintain all alarm acknowledgement, return to normal process, and operation action. This is what I'm saying here. Um, as it takes records, it also takes records of every event. Now, on the system or on the pipelines or on the whole system, as it were, there are usually alarms that are set. Different types of alarms to give to send signals or to create awareness of any anomalies or some other events that could occur. So these alarms, whenever there's a signal, any form of signal, whether from alarm or whatever is set up there. Now, maybe there's, for instance, a reason for temperature to probably there's a drastic drop in pressure or something like that. Now, there will be a pressure alarm that would be signaled, and then it's sent. There will be first the signaling, and then the trigger of the alarm. So when that alarm is triggered, it then sends a data or an information back to the database. So these events are recorded, they are stored, they are already programmed. So for future references, what now happens is that we can always go back to the event database and then get this information and know, okay, at so time, this was what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened, and look from here, you can see that the alarm was triggered, and all that. We can now analyze, okay, what preceded that event, what led to that event. All right. So a lot of other, even it also permits security level logging. So what it means is that there is only authorized personnel that will be allowed to what now access these systems or control the system or operate the system as you may have it, because you have it already secured. It's a high level sensitive system and must be what now thoroughly or properly what now handled, carefully handled rather. All right. So that is it about the pipeline operations using SCADA. But we still have to talk about some other areas. We still have to talk about the petroleum economics. We'll do that shortly or briefly. And we also need to talk about the 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 basic operations of pipeline. All right. I just want to show you these videos. Excuse me, quickly. Talk about how pipeline construction goes on, and then we go into other areas. Now this is, let me reduce the volume. Okay. Now this is showing us the way pipelines are laid and constructed. Look at what's called the right of way. The area through which the pipeline is going to run through. You know. So before pipes are laid, first of all, you create the path through which they are going to be done. They are going to run through. Okay, so this is how the pipe looks like. This is how this this action, this point, and what we're doing here, what is being done here is what we call stringing of the pipes. They have to file or grind them, then fit them, properly position the pipes. So that's what's happening here as they are being laid. So that end to end, we can easily, and you can see systems are also being used for that too. So that's already this is the welding operation going on to join the parts at right? So in the end, we have a layout of the pipeline, and sometimes we might even need to excavate, for pipes that will go under the ground, you know. But before then, they have to be what protected against erosion. They have to be protected against erosion and um, other harsh conditions. So this is how welding is done on the pipes. This kind of international or inter, international pipeline operation, where you have pipeline crossing boundaries or countries and all that. So you can see how it's done. It's usually they are usually massive projects. This thing can take up to 6 months, a year, sometimes 2 years, 3 years, depending on the issue cases. This project repairing and a couple of other factors. All right, so I'll put that here, and then please, I'd like you to quickly take a screenshot of the assignment that will be given before we go into the next um, area of discussion. All right. Okay. So I'll give you about 5 more seconds for you to take a screenshot, and I'll continue. Okay. Please ensure you make use of the subject MGT, that's Management of IOO, International Oil and Gas, Assignment 2, International Oil and Gas Operator, that's IOO, Assignment 2. Then the name of your center and state. Send to engineeringma.jpts@gmail.com. Your deadline for submission is 4th of June 2020. Okay. So quickly, um, before I go to petroleum economics, I just want to touch some other areas as regards the transportation of pipeline and transportation pipeline using it for transportation, storage, and maintenance as regards international oil and gas operation. Okay. Um, it's important to note that pipeline, whether pipelines are transporting natural gas or liquid products, the process is usually similar. Number one, product is gathered from the well, in the ground, and then sent through gathering pipeline to a facility where it is processed or refined. Then the pumps or compressors move it through the system at a what? Safe pace. That's the fluid flow now. Then it's not going to be at a rush per se. No, it will be at a safe pace, which is already um, programmed. Then once the oil is refined or the gas is processed, then it is moved through the feeder pipeline to be distributed to large transmission pipeline. Now, from this whole discussion we're seeing here, or these points that are highlighted here already, you can tell that there are different types of pipelines. We talked about feeder lines, gathering lines, already mentioning transmission lines. I will now say members of what now? A designated authority operates this transmission pipeline to deliver this product across the world now, onto country to where people need it. Like in Nigeria, the DPR and NNPC are in charge, are part of the designated authority that handle um, such operations in Nigeria. You know, though we have, yes, we have them in different across the country anyway. Yes, across the country. So we have it here that it takes about varying periods to 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 deliver the oil and gas product from one location to another. So the time it will take to deliver in one location may not be the same time it will take in another location. All right. So when we're talking about pipelines generally, pipeline for storage of oil and gas products, you know, we have the pipelines, the marine vessels, the trucks or tank trucks, the rail tanks, cars, and the rest of them. These are all used to transport crude oil or compressed and liquefied hydrocarbon gases. And one other thing that we must note is that the conditions may differ for each of these products. Like for gases now, if we are going to transport gases, first, we cannot, because of their nature, if we are going to handle gases or transport them, because of their nature, you have to ensure that they are compressed first of all. So they are compressed to a level where under um, very cold conditions. They are compressed and stored as low as about 162 degrees Celsius. You have to store them, bring them to that level so that they can be what easily handled and transported from one point to another. So when we talk about pipelines generally, it is generally the case that all crude oil and natural gas gas or liquefied petroleum gas products, they flow through pipelines at some time in their migration from whether the well to the refinery or from there to the gas plant or to terminals where they get to the consumers eventually. So we have different types. We have the ones that are above ground, we have the ones that are underground, and um, they have their different specifications also for each of these types. So when we now talk about the types of pipeline, we have about four basic type of pipeline. Number one are flow line. Another one is gathering lines. You heard us mention, or while we're starting this session, we talked about it, or we mentioned them briefly. We talked about flow lines, gathering lines, and the rest of them. Now, flow lines, they usually vary in sizes, and they are they move crude oil or natural gas, from the producing well to the producing field storage tanks and reservoirs. So those ones are usually flow lines, from the producing well where the rig is down to temporary storages or reservoirs where from which it will be transmitted to the processing area. You know, what we make use of in doing that are what now flow lines. All right. So, but there's under flow line, there's what we call a lead line. Now, a lead line is a type of flow line that carries all of the oil produced on a single lead to a storage tank. So that's the difference between um, or that's the actual specification of what we call the lead line. All right. Then we have the gathering and feeder lines. The gathering and feeder lines, those ones are used to collect the. Oh, I don't want to repeat the word gather. So they are used to they are used to collect the oil and gas from several locations for delivery to a central accumulating point. So if, for instance, we have several wells now, different wells. Sometimes you see these gathering lines, especially when it comes to when you have joint venture operations. That's where different um, companies or different organizations or companies that have their own several wells are deciding to work now have a common point of maybe delivery. Sometimes you see it when you are doing when you have to tie in maybe for leasing or for that's for sales and all that, you have to tie into an authorized IOC, for instance. So you could have like several local indigenous companies, for instance, that want to tie into an IOC so that they can also sell through the license of those of such a company. So what will happen is that they will use their gathering line. They use gathering line to what now? Send their product to a central location. First of all, they would have ensured that it is treated to the specification of what they want to tie into, or of what of the company's product they want to tie into. So if you have like company ABC wanting to connect with an organization D, hmm? And D has a license to sell. So ABC will use their gathering line to first of all ensure that their product comes to the specification or the same standard and spec as control D. And then they would gather everything. They will use gathering line to send to particular accumulating points from which it will be tied in to center um, company, company D's own platform. Okay, I think we understand that very well. So we have the crude oil trunk line. The crude oil trunk line. The crude oil trunk line, the natural gas and crude oil are usually moved along um, distances from what producing area of marine ducts. to refineries, and from refineries to storage and distribution facilities by 1 to 3 meters or larger diameter um, trunk lines. So these trunk lines, like what you saw in that video, those are examples of trunk lines that are connected to move either crude oil or natural gas from maybe marine dock to refineries where it will now be processed and the fractions will also be taken off. Now, when you have been able to refine crude into break it down into several fractions, you have different petroleum products. Then we now make use of the petroleum product trunk line. Do you understand that now? We make use of the petroleum product trunk line to what now? Transfer these products. All right. So there are regulations that bind such operations and even the construction of what now? Pipeline. Like you saw in that video where we were trying to show the construction of pipelines and things that we consider. Part of what we consider is what the the plan, the topography, the map. You have to first look at the region, trying to get out what we call the ROW. ROW means what? Right of way. You know, so you plan the route, you obtain a right of way, and permission to proceed. You have to get permission from the government too for such operations, and then you also set up base camps because you'll be moving from at different times you'll be moving from one location to the other in the course of what now constructing or the construction of these work pipes. Okay, now um even in the laying of the pipes and all that, we also have different processes too. For pipeline operations, pipeline operation pipeline may be operated either privately owned or operate, or they may be maybe common carriers. You know, sometimes they may require to carry a company's product. You know, and um, it could even be sometimes that you as a company might have to run your product through another company's line also. Yeah, in such cases, there will be discussions of MOUs and tariffs that will also be attached to that. You know, so for the storage, cleaning, and communication of pipelines, we have first of all talk about the pipeline control. Then we'll also talk about you're going to read this up for the purpose of time. We have to quickly hit on all this. And then we have the oil pumping and gas compressor stations. We also have the pipeline product storage, the way we store products in and the pipeline cleaning. It's in the pipeline cleaning that will make use of pigs. Pigs are referred to as pipeline investigation gauges, and they are used for. They come in different types. You have spherical pigs, mandray pigs. You have cone pigs, and you have different types of pigs. They are used for foam pigs too. You have foam pigs. They are used for different um, kind of cleaning of the pipes, both gas lines and oil lines. All right. So that's basically it on this aspect. And then we talk about the petroleum economics. All right. Petroleum economics. An overview of petroleum economics. Petroleum economics analysis is a vital part in the oil and gas industry. Usually, we have two basic type of expenses that on oil and gas projects. So before you invest in projects, you have to look at what kind of expenses that will be involved. We have the expense pro, we have the expense project and we have the capital project. What kind of project you are carrying? You have the expense project and you have the capital project. The expense project are the ones that maintain reserves of production, but the capital project attain. You understand? One maintains, the other attain. And then we look at reasons for petroleum economics. Number one reason is to help to integrate all technical analysis into recommendations. Yes, all technical analysis, cost benefit analysis, and the rest of them, you integrate them into recommendations. Then it also helps to evaluate these recommendations for profit potential as an economic analyst, as as an economist, or even as an international petroleum operator, you are expected to be able to um, understand the economic dynamics of this operation. So you look at it from two sides. There's the aspect that is absorbing funds, there's the part that is generating money, and there's the part that those are the two ends anyway. But under that part, we, when we talk about generating money, we talk about the aspect that we also reinvest. The generating money part is you look you look at either loans that you have to get from the bank or um sorry, from the absorbing money part, you look at loans or capital or stakeholders funds. Sometimes stakeholders have to put in their profits or their money into this project, or sometimes they have to also add loans that they get to invest. So this is the area of investment. Then when the project is completed, you then have the aspect for loan for money generation where you have profit and shareholders dividend, and then you also have payment of some of those loans that you've gotten, and then you have to what, reinvest. All right. So it explains the calculation in that basis. Thank you.
All right, then that will be the end of the class. Thank you for your time and God bless you.